Good morning, good morning, good morning. We had a lovely little touch of spring that arrived, and then it's all run away. We're back into chilly, cold, rainy winter. Oh, we're just 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It just gives us a little tease, and then it's back into winter. But I'm so enjoying these flowers that are nearly all out. I can't believe that I've still got a couple of buds there. I think they're just going to hang on. My prediction is that they're all going to be open for us by our last day on the 11th day. We'll see. We'll see. I'm enjoying. I just sent my beautiful daughter Zoe, whose 21st I'm going to in a couple of weeks in September. She and her partner are 9 days apart, and they're having their 21st in Queensland, and I'm flying up to be with them. But Zoe sent me these earrings a while ago. I'm going to turn it around. There, she knows my love of flowers, and she found these in a local store. Somebody locally had made them, and yeah, I'm wearing them today. I just love them. I think they're fabulous. So fun, so fun. Love earrings. And because I spent most of my life being seen kind of from here up, I find that earrings just give me a little pop. I can still be wearing my Ugg boots underneath. Ugg boots underneath. So what's going on below the camera is not so glamorous, but up here we're working on it. So good morning. As you come in, make sure you say hi. Let me know who's here. I just love knowing who's on live with me. I would love to hear, after we talked yesterday about our beliefs, and we will find evidence to support whatever we want to believe. I would love to hear if anything came up for anyone. Let me know if there was a kind of out of that became a little bit of an aha. The other thing that I talked about yesterday was this beautiful meditation, which I actually did again this morning, where you visualize yourself, your carefree, joyful, childlike self. Good morning, Eileen. So different from the hot and humid weather here in South Florida. Oh my goodness. If you could just send a little bit of warmth my way, I'd be so thrilled. But if you think about that version of yourself as that carefree young child, what age comes to mind? For me, she's about the 4 or 5-year-old version of me. And then allowing that version of yourself to take you on a fun adventure, to do the things that bring you joy. And it is such a powerful, creative visualization exercise. Good morning, Mary Lou. It is such a powerful thing. And even this morning, I had a few different things come up, and I'm so fascinated with where my imagination and my brain take me on this journey. Good morning from the Sunshine Coast, Lucky Duck. I'm heading up your way in a couple of weeks. And so if anybody else did that, tell me. Good morning, Debbie. It's lovely to see you. Good morning, Belinda. It's lovely, lovely to see you. So who did that exercise? Was there anything that came up? Hey, Fiona. Marmalade on toast is bringing me joy this morning. Oh my goodness, that makes me think of my dad. He was the marmalade king, loved marmalade. I can't even remember the last time I had marmalade. I'm curious. What's it? Is it an orange marmalade? Tell me. Ooh, I'm starting to salivate thinking about it. Yum. So the things that we talked about yesterday, once again, it's so important to do a little recap and to remember the things that we've talked about so that you can start to implement them in your life. What I don't want is to just create more clutter in your life. So let's ground back into, where are we? It is 9:30 on the dot. So let's ground back into why you signed up. Why are you listening to this? And it really, the tagline that I use, good morning, Margaret, is this, desire to become more extraordinary every day, rather than buying into the conversation to accept the demise of our health, looks, sexual vitality, and value as women in society, all these different things that we're told. Good morning. Oh, good afternoon, Pam. Hey, Judy. Good morning, Sandy. Hey, Liz. Oh my gosh, everybody's popping on this morning. Hello, hello. So grounding back into why you're here, my intention to serve you with inside this space, and to think about how we reawaken our enthusiasm for life and unlock your potential to become stronger, healthier, and happier in every way. So that is that's how I encapsulated what I wanted you to get out of this. So as you think about the different things that I've walked you through, the different conversations we've had, it all kind of ties back to that personal responsibility. First and foremost, if it is to be, it's up to me. And deciding what it is that is, where you are, where you want to be, what's in the gap, and the steps that you get to take to get you there. Good morning, Liz. Good morning, Janet. More joy in my life. Appreciate every moment and every opportunity. Fantastic. That's perfect. So what I want to do today is starting to pull some of these pieces that we've talked about together into creating that fantastic, inspiring vision for your life that pulls you up and forward and gets you excited about tomorrow, excited about today, excited about next year and all that is to come. And so if you think about or acknowledge and remember the fact that you are a creative being. Everything that is in your life, you have created. Your experiences, the things that you have around you, you are a creative person. Through the beliefs that you have created your reality, because we all see things through a filter system. We have these belief systems that's running in our head, and the reality is that I think it's if you thinking about something I heard from Bruce Lipton a while ago, and I think it's like 90% or something of our belief systems, of our programming, of the habits that we create, the ways that we think, about 90% of them, or some very high figure, is created before we're 7. Let that sink in. Our belief systems, the habits we create, and these belief systems of not enough, not smart enough, not pretty enough, not creative enough, not sporty enough, not, blah, 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 whatever that is, too introverted, too loud, too something, whatever these belief systems are, lovable, unlovable, worthy, unworthy, most of that is created before we're 7. And then we go into this kind of autopilot. So this is the stuff that's running in your subconscious. More marmalade talk. So this is the stuff that's running in your subconscious. And so when you find yourself habitually going back to ways of thinking that frustrate you or hold you back or continue to feed that sense of not being good enough, not worthy enough, they are coming from subconscious beliefs that you have programmed into your way of thinking. So when we're in that conscious mind, so if we're in the present moment, we can create a different program, but it takes repetition and it takes work and it takes an understanding or clarity about the thing it is that we want to focus on and bring to life, and the programming that we actually want to be running. So there's lots of ways that people talk about this, and it can be, affirmations and positive statements, the I am statements, all these different things come into play. They're all part of the picture, but it is in the taking action and repetition where programs start to be changed. So what I want to do today is get you thinking in this fabulous, most powerful, extraordinary playroom that you have between your ears, called your imagination. And if you think of your life, you think of yourself in your life story as the heroine. Now, for the first half of our life, we're really thinking much more in terms of, really much more in terms of shorter term thinking. When we get into the second half of life, and of course these aren't blanket rules, but this is just observation, is we start to think about legacy. We start to think about what are we going to be remembered for. Now, there was one of our beautiful community members, and I know that she wasn't alone, but Kirsty McGrath left a comment. Kirsty, I don't know if you're with us here or if you're watching on replay, but you're not alone, because there was somebody else that made a comment about this as well. And was that she is not a mother and she's not a wife, and she hears so much of the conversation around why we want to become more extraordinary every day, why we want to do things to really protect our health and so on, so that we can be there for our kids, be there for our grandkids. And she's like, well, I'm not part of that conversation. What am I doing this for? And what I want to talk about is we have, there's 6 human needs. And this is not my work, this is Tony Robbins. But in all the work that he's done, he's worked it out. And actually, I don't think it was his either. It was from a board of psychologists that came up with this, and then he's gone on to teach it. But we have 6 human needs. Now, those that have been in my community for a while or in my masterminds, you know that you've heard me talk about this. But in essence, it is certainty, uncertainty, significance, love and contribution, growth, and love and connection, growth, and contribution. So I'm not going to dive into all of them today, but what I want to talk about is in terms of legacy, our legacy, and how we're going to be remembered and what we're going to be remembered for. Let's think of this in terms of the 2 human needs of significance and contribution. Now, what I want to really drive home, you hear me talk about who we're being comes first. There's 3 key elements that I talk about inside vision building. It's who you're being, what you're doing, and what you have. The things, who you want to be, what you want to do, and what you want to have. Being is always first. It is the most important thing. It is the thing that determines what we can do and what we will have. So if you think about in terms of significance and contribution, what people remember you for, first and foremost, is how you make them feel. So if you think about the people in your life, the people who are the most memorable, we're thinking back, for the women in this community, we're thinking back over 45, 55, 65, 75 years. The things that we remember most powerfully is how people make us feel. The person that made you feel stupid, dumb, unwanted, unloved, heartbroken, they're easy to remember. And the people that made you feel seen, heard, and valued. Now, I've got 2 logos inside my business, inside my community. And yes, they're, for you, but mostly they're for me. I've got the one that is the kind of inspire and connect. And that is really about my, what I do through interviewing and these sort of series. But my other one is seen, heard, and valued. And that is the constant reminder, because it is what I want, and it is my intention for the people in my communities, for my husband, for my children, for my friends, for my, every significant person in my life. If I set the intention for how I want them to feel when they're around me, how I want you to feel inside my community, it is seen, heard, and valued. So when you think about your legacy and how you want to be remembered and what you want to be remembered for first, I really encourage you to think about how you set the intention to make people feel. How do people get to feel when they're around you? So when you start to do this work, when you think about what you want to write down on your pen and paper, because we're in action in here, not just mindlessly consuming, how do you want to make people feel? So you can break this down into, think about if you have a significant other, if you have children, if you have people that you are in your work environment. If you have, I know one of our extraordinary community members who was a client some years ago, and she has stayed front and center in my heart. She is part of that incredible, creating a community around that incredible charity where they get women's handbags and fill them full of things that women need who are perhaps homeless or struggling financially. And so the impact that she is having through that is extraordinary. How she is making people feel seen, heard, and valued is extraordinary. Her legacy inside that is going to be extraordinary. So when you think about the legacy that you want to leave, yes, we're thinking about the doing. But first and foremost, I really want you to think about how you make people feel. So as you move into any situation, as you think about leaving a comment in this group, if you think about leaving a comment on somebody else's post that they've written, you are wanting to impact by how you make them feel. Every time you pick up the phone to talk to a friend, to talk to a child, to talk to a work colleague, whoever it is, every time you go to the grocery store to buy your groceries, how do you want to leave the person that you've connected with? How do you want them to feel? So when we talk about our being words, one of the words that comes up inevitably is generosity, wanting the desire to be more generous. Now that can play out like my coach Sand Sumner, who giving $1 million to charity on her vision board, which was an incredibly powerful. When she told me that, when I heard her say that, it was just such an explosion in my mind of why I want to be wealthy, why I want to be in a position where I can give more that way. But that is no more powerful. It is just a different form of generosity, but it is no more powerful than being the person that generously makes eye contact and looks up and smiles at the person they're walking past. I have this thing, when I go on my morning walk, I walk past many people, sometimes nobody, but as the weather warms up, there's lots of other people out and about. I always set the intention to make eye contact and smile. And sometimes I receive that in return, which is an absolute gift to receive that. But if I don't receive it, at least I know I'm setting the intention to give that energy out into the world. So that's the first and foremost. Feeling seen, heard, and valued is something we all want, isn't it? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it is setting the intention. We can get so caught up in, what are people going to think about me? What if I say something stupid? What if I can't think of the right thing to say? What if I don't know how to contribute to this conversation? Then there is what if they think I look dumb in this outfit? What if like I'm being judged as being too fat, too thin, too grey, it's all that me. When we put the focus on ourselves, it's paralyzing. Of course, there's always going to be reasons. There's reasons why I could, if I thought only about me and how you might think about me, I probably would never turn the video on. And I would never show up go and stand on a stage somewhere in front of 1,000 people and be able to talk if that was my focus. Because what you focus on, finish the sentence for me, what you focus on expands. So if you are focusing on all the reasons why you are not ready to, why you're not worthy to, why you don't look good enough, that inward focus, then of course it is very difficult to show up and impact other people positively. So flip it around and focus on, how do I want to make other people feel? How do I get to be of service? So when we think about these two, let me bring it back to the 6 human needs, and particularly for the sake of today's conversation, significance and contribution. You have all brought with you to this point in your life, be that 45 years, 55 years, 65 years, 75 years, you have gathered a wealth of wisdom and life experience. That alone makes you significant in some area, regardless of what that is. Now, think about, how do you pay that forward and contribute it to somebody else? So over the last couple of days, you will have heard me talk about, there was that naturopath that I went to see after I'd been working in hospitality for years, drinking too much, dancing on a bar for a living. I still can't remember who that person was, or it's hard to imagine I was that person, but gee whiz, it was fun at the time. But I came back and sat in front of that naturopath, and it was just this moment. It was through who she was being and how she made me feel in that one-hour consultation that completely changed my life. It completely changed the trajectory of my life, because I wanted to be like her and I wanted to do what she did. So you don't know, it may be that you have been in front of somebody for just a short snippet of time and have the potential to completely change the trajectory of their life. Think about that as a legacy. Now, you may not know. I don't even remember what that naturopath's name was. I've got no idea. And I wish I did, because I would love to write to her and thank her. And I can honestly say, I think the people that have had that kind of impact in my life, I could probably count them on one hand, and that's in 50 years. There are a small number of people that will come across your path that teach you a lesson. And some of those lessons are hard lessons. It's about who you don't want to be and what you don't want to be like. But some of them are an example of who you do want to be and what you do want to be like, and the kind of legacy that you get to leave. So if I think about those people in my life, energy flows, absolutely. So think about, in terms of legacy, yes, there's all sorts of things that we do and have that we may well be remembered for, but remember, it is how you make people feel. So when I think about the people that have impacted me, I was a particularly unhappy teenager at boarding school, very overweight, very shy, filled to overflowing with not good enough conversations, not likable enough, not lovable enough, not smart enough, not sporty enough, not arty enough, not academic enough. I just decided to take on every single belief of not enough that you could possibly find. And I feel that I had friends then, but I certainly probably wasn't a very good friend, because I was so focused on this not enoughness, and so I didn't particularly show up well for other people. I was fortunate enough to meet somebody later who really showed me what it was to be a phenomenal friend, and I learned through being her friend the kind of friend that I want to be. And I celebrated her 49th birthday with her just a couple of weeks ago, and I took significant time to really tell her that and to pass that on, because the impact that she has had on my life through having the most incredibly non-judgmental, enormous, loving heart has been profound. And if I thought I could leave that kind of impact on somebody else, that is the kind of legacy that I want to leave. So think about acceptance would be a starting point for me as a legacy. That's really interesting. I'd love to dive into that a bit more. Debbie, acceptance of yourself or acceptance, being more accepting of other people. And remember, inside this space, it is always a no fault, blame, guilt, shame. I can clearly remember times I spent many, many years as a single mum, living day to day financially, never feeling like I had enough money. And I think about the amount of times that I walked past people or situations where I could have, put $1 in somebody, like a busker's thing, but never feeling like I could even do that. And just having so much guilt around it and not wanting to be generous or feeling incapable of being generous because I just was in that really scarcity, never quite having enough. And so having to hold everything close to my chest. We all have these different experiences of others. Non-judgmental inclusiveness is what I mean. So that is an environment that has taught you that, Debbie. And, I think about the environment that I grew up in, and my beautiful mum has all sorts of belief systems around what it means to be a successful human, and it's very tied into appearances around money and how much the kind of car that you drive and the kind of house you live in and the kind of school you go to and all these things. And that's a learned thing. So we can, depending on what that is, that judgmentalness, I talk about reverse snobbery. I spent years not wanting to tell people really where I came from or the school that I went to, because I got slapped with this reverse snobbery. It's like, well, you're too big for your boots. You think you're too good for me, this kind of thing, which could not be further from the truth. But that is equal in that, that snobbery that is felt from people that don't have the fineries and, feel like they're being judged for not having enough. And I think, we can layer this out into the color of our skin, and there's all sorts of, if you don't have a degree, if there's a judgmental there. We, depending on our environment and where we grow up, this came into the beliefs conversation that we had yesterday around vaccinated or non-vaccinated, the judgmental hatred that was poured out from both sides, both equally guilty. And it's the same whether you look at politics or, you just have to go online to see the vehemence in which judgmental itness is just rampant, this sense of divide and conquer, black and white, right and wrong. And so if we take out the fault, blame, guilt, shame and see it as an environmental conditioning, an environmental way that we're taught how to behave, just step out of that and look at where you're being judgmental. We all have judgment around things, and just look at it with curiosity. It's like, why am I seeing it that way? Does it make me feel more significant to judge them as something? Never is this more prevalent than in the parenting world. We look at how other people parent and use that as a way to either make ourselves feel better or to make ourselves feel worse, depending on what we're looking at. We all judge things. But if we can step back out of that space just with a view of curiosity. So Debbie, I'm particularly grateful to you for bringing that up. It's a really, really powerful exercise for people to do and to think about how we make people feel. I'd love you to just, if you gave me one example of where that judgmentalness is showing up that is causing you frustration in yourself, because if it is for one, then it is for many, I promise. So when you think about what I want you to take away from this, we've got Maryon Stewart is going to be joining us shortly, and I'm so excited for this conversation, because we're talking about two of the biggest things that midlife women have frustration with. One is our sex libido, our libido, our sex lives, and the other one is hot flashes. And Maryon has got so much to share with us shortly, so I'll be bringing her on in a minute. But what I want you to take away from this first half an hour and the conversation that we've had is, if you perhaps take a moment to step outside of yourself and picture yourself as the heroine in your life story. You have come to the point that you are in your life with these amazing stories. You've experienced so many things, the highs and lows, the grief, the celebrations, the new life, the adventures through many different careers, possibly through many different versions of yourself. You've got all these different chapters of your life, and you may think of it in terms of preschool, primary school, secondary school, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, wherever you're up to. But now you get to step outside of that and just do a little reset. Today's topic is, how to get a midlife refuel. Well, Maryon's going to share lots of fabulous ideas with us about that. But how about, just as a starting point, you take yourself out of your life for a minute and view it from the outside. Think about, so if I've got this second half of my life that I'm going to design, be really deliberate. If it is to be, it's up to me to create this picture of how I want this next chapter of my life story to read. What do I want that to look like? Who do I want to be remembered as? What do I want to be remembered for? How do I want to make people feel? And of course, you can use those pillars of health, wealth, time, and love. That's a great way to break it down. But, this gets to be fun. This gets to be fun. It doesn't have to be some heavy, tiresome homework like we were at school kind of homework. This is like, oh, I get to do this. I get to design this next chapter of my life, reawaken that enthusiasm for life and that excitement for the future, that I get to become the strongest, healthiest, happiest version of myself. Get it down on paper so that you know what it is that you're bringing to life. And then the next step is just to get into action, because you've got your blueprint, you've got your plan. And of course, in the Enliven Vision Board workshop, we are going to be walking through this step by step to support you to do that. But for now, I want to introduce you to the fabulous Maryon Stewart, who has joined us after knocking herself on the head yesterday. And I'm sure she'll share this story with us briefly. She sent me an email this morning that she gave herself a mild concussion, and she has still taken the time to show up for us today, which is extraordinarily generous. We want to talk about being generous. Here's an amazing example. So Maryon is the author of Manage Your Menopause Naturally and another 27 books. Get your head around that. Oh my goodness, talk about leaving a legacy. A world-renowned healthcare expert, she has helped tens of thousands of women around the world overcome PMS and menopause symptoms without using drugs or hormones. So, Maryon, hang on, let me just find, there you are. Welcome. Hi. Oh my goodness, Maryon. I hope you're feeling all right, honey. I'm in awe of you to take the time to show up for us today.
Yes, it's been quite an interesting day today, but I'm here, and that's what counts, really. I just wanted to be here and fulfill my promises. And I love what you were saying just now, because I always encourage my patients to design the life of their dreams. Once they don't have any symptoms anymore, they have a blank canvas, and they can really start, as you say, being the best version of themselves. And it's such an exciting time, because you've got all your wisdom.
That's right.
You can really have a great time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, obviously you talking about getting ourselves back into the healthiest versions of ourselves naturally is a topic that I'm particularly passionate about, and I'm looking forward to breaking down into so we get some clear answers around hot flashes and sex drive, because I think they're two big questions in our world. But first, if I can just, there's going to be people in our audience that haven't met you until this moment. So could you just take a step back from that conversation and tell us, how did you come to be doing what you're doing now?
Well, it started a long time ago, and it was just one of those serendipitous things that I was in a situation where my ex-husband was starting the British Society for Nutritional Medicine. I was based in England at the time, and he and 3 other doctors got together 10,000 medical papers on the non-drug approach to health. And I was on maternity leave after our second baby, and they didn't think I had much to do. So they gave them to me to sort into conditions. And I found 200 papers on premenstrual syndrome. And so I was so taken aback that you could handle it all naturally. This is going back a long time. And we trained his nurse to deliver the goods, as it were. And then the media got to hear about it. And so the rest is really history. With PMS, we had, in the early days, before even emails, we had over 2,000 letters a day from women all over the world, actually. In fact, lots from Australia. And I remember being in Melbourne at a women's library that had just opened, and I was doing a photo shoot, and the guy kept saying, "Put your hand back, put your hand back." And when I looked back, I thought my arm was going to break off. I had my hand on the bookshelf, and there were 2 copies of my PMS video there. And we'd only ever had 5,000 produced because they were funded, and by that time we'd lent them out to everyone. I only owned 1, and I was just completely beside myself that I was in the other side of the world in Melbourne, and there were 2 on the shelf. So I realized at that point that we really had helped women all over the world. And it's just brilliant, because whether it's PMS or menopause, when women have what I call, in this case, a midlife refuel, they go, it's such an incredible transformation. They go from feeling like giving up on life, because we know from our surveys that 2/3 of women feel robbed of life as they knew it. And 96% say that they are taken by surprise by their menopause, through to feeling better than they can remember. And it's such a delight to see the transformation. You know, instead of leaving the workplace, they're thriving. And instead of curling up in a ball and not wanting to be touched in their relationships, they're back to being creative and feeling like their normal, sexy selves again, when they didn't even think it was possible. So they get blown away, and we get blown away just seeing, facilitating the process.
The thing that just baffles me and makes me so sad is that this is wisdom that should have been passed down from grandmother to mother to daughter, and so on and so on. How did we lose touch so completely with these fundamental understandings of how to care for our bodies naturally?
Well, we didn't, because if you think about it, 100 years or so ago, women weren't living much past 50. So it didn't really matter. And it's a really well-kept secret that, even though it's in the medical literature and research has been done all around the world, that billions of women have got nutritional deficiencies, which affects your brain chemistry and your hormone function. And that comes about during your childbearing years, and it gets worse as you get older. And then when you get to perimenopause, which is that 8 years leading up to menopause, everything's starting to wind down. Your ovaries are retiring, and then you have empty receptor sites, and the brain doesn't get it, because we weren't living much past 50. So it can't understand why your ovaries aren't working. So it's trying to kickstart your ovaries back into function, which is why you get these thermal surges that we know as hot flashes and night sweats, because the brain is literally trying to wake the ovaries up. And obviously that's not going to happen anytime soon. So what we do on our program is we teach women how to have a refuel, how to get their nutrients back into an optimum range, and how to fill the receptor sites with Mother Nature's estrogen, so that you can literally fool the brain into thinking that you've got normal circulating levels, and the symptoms disappear.
Okay. So I was blindsided by perimenopause, and I'm still in perimenopause now. But I can remember the first, I think we're going back sort of 5 years now, just getting these crazy flooding periods and, other things that were going on that I just had no real concept that was coming. And I think there's a lot of symptoms that come up through perimenopause that people don't necessarily realize is tied to perimenopause. There's this bewildering kind of changes that are going on. Can you pinpoint a few of those so that the women who are in this phase that may be struggling with certain things understand where it's coming from? So what are some of the classic
So Julie, who works with me on my team, when she came to work with me, she was in perimenopause, but she had no clue. And it wasn't until she started attending the sessions with the women and seeing what was going on that she realized she hadn't slept for 2 years for more than 2 hours a stretch. And she thought she was just getting old because her grandmother could never sleep and used to take sleeping pills. And she also had brain fog. So she thought that she was kind of just getting old again, and she had to write things down and keep checking on herself and redoing things. And so those kind of things, and anxiety, especially these days with COVID being in the air and everyone feeling so stressed about world events, when your cortisol level rises, you get symptoms that actually mimic menopause. So everything from depression to fatigue to belly fat to brain fog, anxiety, panic attacks and palpitations, all of those things are associated both with menopause and high cortisol levels. So it's really, really learning how to meet your needs and replenishing your stores of things and learning how to bring down the cortisol naturally so that you can actually feel symptom-free, and not just symptom-free, because what most people don't realize, and in fact, I remember being in Australia another time, I was in the theatre in Perth, and I was invited to Menopause the Musical for 5 nights in a row, signing books in the foyer. And I remember listening to the women filing past me saying, been there, done that, and got the T-shirt. And I'm thinking to myself, well, actually, you haven't, because menopause is actually 1 day. It's the anniversary of your last period. And then you're postmenopausal for the rest of your life. And at that point, you are much more vulnerable. You're vulnerable because you're more likely to have a heart attack than a man. And 50% of women die from their first heart attack. You're more likely to get osteoporosis, the bone thinning disease. 20% of bone mass can disappear at the time of your menopause. And hip fractures can actually be fatal. So, and also dementia. That's the other thing we're much more predisposed to. But the research shows that you can prevent all those things. So learning to meet your needs as you get into perimenopause will not only stop you going down the rabbit hole when you get to menopause so that you don't have a terrible time, but it also keeps you feeling well and just keeps you in the driving seat for the rest of your life so that you can actually stay feeling healthy and vital so that you can be productive in the workplace and you can actually show up in the way that you want to and live that life of your dreams that you were talking about.
So let's dive in a little bit more deeply into hot flushes, because I actually know how to turn mine on and off. I know what makes them if I drink alcohol, I will have a hot flush at night, and if I eat the wrong foods, and if I don't do those things, I have next to no night sweats. So I'm interested in your findings on that and your experience from listening to other women and what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, there are things like alcohol, caffeine, even hot drinks, if they're too hot, can bring a hot flush, and spicy foods. They're the main ones. And the way to calm them down is to actually meet the needs of the receptor sites. So when you look under the microscope at the molecule of estradiol, which is the estrogen that you have before menopause, and Mother Nature's isoflavone, they're almost identical. They're so similar that you can actually fool the brain into thinking you've got normal circulating levels. So having foods that contain soy and flax seeds. In fact, there was a study done. It was the first study I ever read on natural menopause in 1990. And it was done at Monash University. And they took a group of women and they fed them soy, flax seeds, and red clover. And they found they were able to bring about similar change in the lining of the vagina as the women who were taking HRT. So that was when I really took an interest and realized that you can do natural things to help yourself and have a similar effect. And it's just amazing. Not only will you overcome your hot flushes, but the other subject we're talking about is libido. Well, when you're running on empty, you're going to have low libido. And in fact, in our surveys, and we've surveyed thousands of women, over 90% of women say they can't have an orgasm, and over 70% of them have got vaginal dryness. And you can overcome all of that. You can get the lubrication back, you can get the libido, that lovely sexy feeling back again, just by having a refuel and by learning to meet your needs as you go through this transition. And it's just remarkable what you can do, and the transformation that comes about. And once you've got the knowledge, you've got it forever.
Yep. Yeah. It's, you know, my ears perk up when you talk about soy. I think, you know, we in the nutrition space, there seems to be this huge surge of all or nothing. So suddenly everybody's vegan or everybody's going off dairy. And I remember when that happened, you know, soy milk came in, everybody was on soy products. And then we were hearing that having soy is actually really bad for you. So then we cut out all soy. And so we just seem to have these huge waves of jumping on one thing. And then that becomes, you know, the whole low fat, no fat. And then now it's high fat. How do we ascertain, you know, what amount of soy and the sources of soy? Because I know that there's going to be a lot of people in here that just cut out soy altogether after this last big wave of soy is now the evil food.
I honestly, really, I think the only way you do with this and what we do is we follow what the research shows.
Yeah.
And the research clearly shows that soy is good for you, especially organic soy, and that it has a cancer protective effect. I've got all the research in my book, and in fact, chapter 3 of my latest book, Manage Your Menopause Naturally, is dedicated to the foods rich in isoflavones, Mother Nature's estrogen. And I talk in there about all the negative stuff and counter it with the research. And I'm in touch with the professors who do that research. So I'm regularly tuning in to anything new. If you look at Asian communities where they've been consuming soy for absolute centuries, they've had half the incidence of estrogen-dependent cancer, heart disease, osteoporosis, and they didn't even have a term in their language for hot flush until they followed a group of women who went to America and ate a Western diet. So once they started eating the Western type of diet, then they got the symptoms. So it's really what we're trying to do is we're not trying to make everyone have tofu kebabs. It's really easy. You know, you can just have a bit of soy milk, you can have a few edamame beans, you can have some flax seeds. It's all very enjoyable. And because women don't find it difficult, it's so easy to follow in the long term. And because they feel so much better once they get 4 weeks into the program, it's a 6-week program, they are feeling so much better. They're sleeping through the night. Their anxiety is gone. They're not aching anymore. The hot flushes are calming down. And by the time they get a few months down the line, their libido is back as well. And once you've achieved that, your skin is glowing, your vagina is lubricated again, you're motivated to carry on because you can see that it's really helping.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely going to be questions popping up around HRT, the pros and cons and how to think about this. Can we sort of have a dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, well, we don't use HRT. We've never needed to. We have had some women on our program who've been taking HRT. Some of them want to wean off it. And I never suggest that anyone comes off suddenly because you can get awful withdrawal symptoms. And some women can't take it out. For example, in our last survey on 1,100 women, we found 41% of the women had been prescribed HRT. 14% didn't take it because they were too afraid of the side effects. And of those who did take it, 62% came off because of adverse side effects. And so it doesn't really suit everybody. Some women can't take it anyway because they've got a history of breast cancer or blood clots or whatever it is in their family. And therefore they need an alternative. And in our surveys, 90% of women say that they would rather manage their menopause naturally. So the information is there. What I try and do in my books is what I specialized in doing over the years is bringing together all the research in one place. And so in my book, in each chapter, I've got the research in very kind of general people speak, as it were. And at the back of the book, I've got all the medical references, all the main medical references that support each chapter, because everything we do is based on published medical research. And I get very angry. For example, the Mayo Clinic survey in 2019 in the US showed that only 7% of doctors and gynecologists feel adequately educated to help women going through menopause. And I think that's an atrocity.
It is. It unquestionably is. Yes, I feel like the medical field now is just really so focused on prescription. Like it's just writing a prescription for something. That's how it's sort of has evolved. So if we look at the current, we've touched on the idea that there's all these sort of trends that come and go. We've had one or two sort of conversations around intermittent fasting, and there is a side that say that that's a really great thing for midlife women, and there's a side that's saying it's definitely not. What are you seeing with that?
I think in the long term, it's a good idea. But in the short term, when women have got nutritional deficiencies, the last thing they want to do is starve themselves 16 hours a day. We need to be eating wholesome food regularly to actually make up for those nutritional deficiencies. And I remember years ago, my ex-husband got the short straw, and we did an experiment to see how long it took to make someone nutritionally deficient. And he had the national average consumption of junk food, as well as trying to eat healthily. And we had to abort the experiment within 6 or 8 weeks. I can't remember. I think it was 8 weeks. And it was his personality really changed. Yeah. And he went from being energetic to, well, he fell asleep on his waiting room sofa with a can of cola in his hand. His 2 o'clock patient came in and wondered what on earth was going on. But he was angry, and he was just different. And it took 11 weeks for his nutrient levels to come back into an optimum range. 2 of his nutrients became deficient in that short time. And so when we're asking women to live the life of their dreams, or perform in the workplace, or feel sexy, or even energetic, it's too hard to do that when you're running on empty, when you're in what I call economy mode. Do you know, you can't do that. It's as simple as that. You've got to look after yourself, nurture yourself, and have that midlife refuel. So then you gradually, over a period of a few months, come back to feeling like your old self again.
Yeah, you can't run on an empty tank. It's a logical kind of thing, but we have this soldier on mentality. Take another pill to squash down the symptom that is something, and then it just gets to the point where there's nothing left. I know there's going to be questions coming up. I'm just going to do a quick check-in. Fastest growing age for divorce is 50 plus. I wonder how much menopause stage contributes to this. That's a really interesting point. Husbands not understanding, never mind the women.
Well, of course the husbands don't understand. The thing is, I mean, we did a survey on men, and they feel frustrated and rejected.
Yeah.
And they're scared to have a conversation because they don't want to throw fuel on the fire. The women are terrified. They don't want to have a conversation because they think the only way is down. And they don't want to open their mouths about how bad they're feeling because they have no idea that they can feel better again. So once they both understand that this is just a transition and that all you need is a refuel, then it becomes and especially if they go through it together, they come out so much stronger for it at the end. And we've been doing a lot of work in the workplace as well, and educating men about how to support their partners and also their employees, their team, so that they can actually help them to come out the end of the tunnel feeling much more, instead of bombing out the workplace and them losing talent, we can actually get the women turbocharged so that they can really be productive again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've just done such a great disservice, this idea of normalizing, the inevitable demise and feeling crappy, and that it's just become normalized and it doesn't actually need to be the normal. How do you test for nutritional deficiencies? Jenny's asking.
Well, there are a few labs where you can do that, but to be perfectly honest, we don't do it because, again, there are physical signs. Mother Nature gives us all these lovely signs on our skin, our hair, and our nails. And I talk about that in chapter 2 of the new book, so that you can actually become familiar with what you're short of, and then you can replace it. And because women, even on our 6-week course, feel completely different, there's no need to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on doing tests. I use tests, but only for a very small percentage of my patients who've got a complicated medical history.
Yeah. So what's hair loss a sign of?
Hair loss very often can be associated with low levels of iron, maybe thyroid function as well. And also if you're just short of, and very often we know from our research that we did in the early days that things like magnesium, zinc, essential fatty acids, calcium, B vitamins. There's just so many things that are in short supply. When you're running on empty, then you're obviously not going to have gorgeous looking hair, strong nails, smooth skin, and you're just not, because if you've been on a diet in your life or after you've had a baby, that you get hair loss and all of that kind of stuff because you've been giving out. And you just need to make sure that you're taking in again so that you get back to glowing from the inside out.
And it's that constant low-level stress that just is not being supported in other ways. It has that compounding effect.
Yeah, our program is a bit like a 5,000-mile service. It's like we're looking at absolutely every aspect of a woman. They fill in a big detailed questionnaire and diary, and we really don't leave any stones unturned because, as you say, there are so many different factors going on that you need to really look at everything and help someone, because we're all different and we go through this in a slightly different way and we've all got a different history. We just need to have some individual help. Once we've got the knowledge and we're applying whatever it is that's being recommended, it's just so easy. Honestly, it's just, it's a scary thought, making changes, because we're all creatures of habit, aren't we? We love to kind of do our thing and not make too many changes. But actually, these changes are pretty enjoyable. After the first couple of weeks, I'd say, once people get into the swing of it, it becomes second nature, just like cleaning your teeth in the morning.
Yeah, I love the idea of a 5,000-mile service. I think it's probably a bit more than 5,000 miles, but yeah, I love that idea. So I've got somebody saying, what are the key foods to support someone going through perimenopause, especially those with extremely low iron due to heavy bleeding and flooding? What are your views around hysterectomies?
Okay, so the iron-rich foods, and again, I go into this much more detail, not just in the book, but also in the Midlife Refuel Club, where there's lots of free material. There's an actual nutritional assessment tool in there. And the iron-rich foods, if you eat meat, the richest thing is liver and red meat. And if you don't, then legumes and green leafy vegetables. There are plenty of good things that contain iron. Hysterectomy, I would say, depending on if you've got cancer, obviously you need to have radical hysterectomy. If you don't, I have honestly encountered thousands of women who've been told to have their ovaries removed just in case and have absolutely lived to regret it. So I don't think a hysterectomy is necessary unless there's something fundamentally wrong. And because you can overcome all your symptoms, even if you've got cysts and fibroids and all that, we can shrink those. And you can just keep all your bits without having them removed. It's such a, having a hysterectomy, well, if you have a radical hysterectomy, you go into a really sudden menopause, and it can be very distressing.
Yep. Where are we, Liz? I can't seem to shift menstrual headaches. Still trying to find the missing link. I've tried so many things. She's in menopause. Any ideas around that?
Well, I've only ever had one patient in all the years who went off with headaches. And so usually the headaches go quite quickly. There are so many different things that could be causing them. So it could be that you've got low levels of nutrients, low levels of essential fatty acids, short of magnesium. You may be having caffeine, too much caffeine. You may not be breathing properly. There's just so many different things. Once we get people started on the program, the headaches usually go within 4 weeks. And even persistent people have had headaches all their menstruating life, their headaches disappear as well. So, and there are some herbs as well that can help. That have been through properly conducted clinical trials, things like feverfew. So that, we'll kind of work out for each individual person what's the best thing to do.
Yep. Are supplements necessary, or can you generally get all you may be lacking in this stage of life from just eating the right foods? That's such a great question, Debbie.
Yeah, it is a good question. I would say that probably in the beginning for most people, I have had a few people who go through and they don't want to take supplements and they do it without. It's harder. I would say that for the first probably at least 3 months, you need to take some supplements, because if you've got deficiencies, it's quite difficult to replace everything just with food. But having said that, the supplement world is a bit of a hornet's nest, because it's not a standardized industry. And very often the research shows that what it says on the label isn't actually in the pack or pot. And so we are very particular about which supplements we recommend. And again, I mentioned that in chapter 4 in the book, with the names of the supplements and the doses and everything for the particular symptom sets, because those supplements have been through properly conducted clinical trials. Some of them come from Australia, some from America, they're from all over the place. And they have been shown not just to be effective, but also safe. Because when you're meddling with your hormones, the last thing you want is an overgrowth of the lining of the uterus or anything funny going on in your breasts. You want to make sure that what you're taking is going to be good for you.
Yeah. I think of supplements as, they're a medicine. It's a therapeutic thing. If you have something that is not functioning as it should be in the body, then you're taking a medicine, which can be a supplement. It's a therapeutic thing that, this idea that we are shoving in supplements from the supermarket just in case, I think is, just not a great idea.
Well, no, I mean, we were asked to recommend a supplement years ago that the company said contained 39 milligrams of isoflavones. And I was in the US at a conference on isoflavones, and I was moaning at tea time to 2 researchers I knew. One was a professor from Oxford, and another one was one of the professors who has published a lot on isoflavones from Johns Hopkins. And I said, I'm baffled by all these supplements that come onto the market, and I don't really know which ones to recommend. And they kind of looked at each other and said, if you can keep secret, we'll share with you a publication that we submitted, which was an independent analysis. And this particular supplement that was supposedly containing 39 milligrams of isoflavones in that study contained 1 milligram. And of the 40 supplements they had in the study, only 2 of them contained what they said on the label.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really shocking.
Yeah, it is shocking. It's appalling that is allowed to happen. All right, last question. Elizabeth, how can you deal with acne naturally, especially cysts? Want to remove antibiotic and creams. 12-year-olds getting worse in your period, suffer with acne, but not as bad.
I remember being the nutritionist for a program on TV in the UK called Model Behavior. I had 16 to 18-year-olds, and we were down to 6 finalists, and one of them had the worst acne I've ever seen. She had this great big spot which was full of pus hanging off her nose. You couldn't help but look at it because it was so awful. By the time we finished, we changed her diet. She was exercising. She took some supplements. Very often people have got low levels of zinc and other nutrients that affect our skin. And when you get the balance right, the skin clears up. And so you don't have to be, I did another book, which is out of print now, for that thing called Model Behavior. And if anybody wants a copy of that, I can let them have an e-copy, because I've still got it for 14 to 24-year-olds. And it's got a whole chapter in there on acne. So
what was that book called, Maryon?
It was called Model Behavior.
Okay.
The program was called Model Behavior. The book was called The Model Plan.
Okay. Model Plan.
Yeah, you won't find. I don't think you'll even find it on Amazon.
I know that there's going to be people that are there's lots of yes pleasers coming through. So I'll send you an email after and grab that link from you if you're happy to share it, so that I can get it into this community. Thank you so much for your time, Maryon. I want to absolutely honour that you've given us this half an hour after, with a headache and all the things that have happened to you yesterday. So
I did bend down to pick something up, and then I collided with this great big pointed edge of a cupboard. So it's like,
that's enough. It's horrible. So you do have a gift for our audience, your Midlife Refuel Club, I think. Did you want to take just a minute to let everyone know what that is?
Yeah, so the Midlife Refuel Club is a place where I've put a lot of my content, and it's free to join. So you can just, I think you've got the link to it, but if people just go to my website, which is maryonstewart.com, MaryonStewart.com, you'll see there you can just join the Midlife Refuel Club. And in there are films and webinars and downloads and all sorts of things. And then we usually have weekly live sessions. So we'll be starting those again in September. We had a break for August. And we're also creating an app, which will be probably launched in a few weeks' time. We're just putting the content in there, so that will all work from everyone's phone. So lots of good free things, as well as obviously if people, and I think if people are, if you're perimenopausal and you're looking to prevent something, you can do it yourself if you've got the knowledge. If you're bowled over by your symptoms and you really don't know which way is up, then you probably need a bit of extra help, and then the course or something similar will be good for you, so that you can really get some help and support as you're going through this. And so there's something there for everybody, whether it's a book or free stuff or actual hand-holding help. There's something available so that people can actually get through this transition, come out the other end of it feeling really brilliant.
Oh, so generous. And, we started this conversation, I started this conversation before you came on, with thinking about legacy and what we want to be remembered for, who we want to be remembered for. And the legacy that you're leaving is absolutely extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. And to give women back that sense of hope that things can get turned around and we can get back to feeling fabulous is just magical. Thank you so much for your time, Maryon.
My pleasure.
All right, people, there is so much there that you get to dive into and take away. I'm so inspired by that conversation. I hope you were too. No problem. So I'll get that link from Maryon so that I can pass it on to you for the model plan that she talked about, and I'll pop it out in the email that you'll get in a little bit, the recap and replay email that will also have the link to the other gift that she has mentioned. So that's it for today. Oh my gosh, such a good conversation. We are getting to tomorrow's day 10, and then day 11 is the last day of this amazing challenge. So I hope that everybody just takes a moment to sit back in that intention that you had, what you wanted to get out of this challenge. We've got these 2 last days coming up. If you have got it, let me know. I would love to hear what you have got, that your intention has been met. And if not, let me know so that I can support you to make sure that your intention is met before we wind this up. Of course, we've got, after this, starting next week on the 5th of September, is the Enliven Vision Board workshop, where all this work just comes together and I can step you through creating this incredible vision for your next chapter. And then we've got all the hows in, to support you to bring it to life. So if you sign up before Wednesday midnight, I am gifting you a one-on-one conversation with me, plus you get to bring a friend for free, or you can split the cost between you. But that's only available until midnight on Wednesday the 31st. Once we jump into spring, that you can still sign up for Enliven, but those 2 bonuses are no longer available. All right, beautiful women, wishing you a fabulous day ahead, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.